independents live and die by the quality of the work that they do. Their reputation really hinges on their ability to come in and do really good work. Part of the cost that you're paying for with an independent is the fact that as an employer, you're transferring risk to them. There are obviously two sides to this equation, the return and the cost. And typically, the initial focus is on the cost.
Hi there, and welcome to Outsized Advantage. I'm Niclas Thelander, founder of Outsized. I've got with me today Johann van Niekerk, our CEO and head of Africa.
Good to be with you. Thank you.
Good to have you here. Today, we are going to talk about return on investment when it comes to flexible workforce models. It's something we get quite a few questions on from clients or potential clients in terms of how to think about it when comparing the cost of using more independent talent versus permanent employees. So maybe, Johan, to kick it off, how do you think about ROI?
There are obviously two sides to this equation, the return and the cost. And typically, the initial focus is on the cost. So let's maybe start there. And it's naturally a focus for all clients and something that they have to take into consideration when they think about any expense, of which obviously professional talent coming in on a contract basis is one. And the natural inclination is to compare the cost of a salary, which you're paying to an employee on a permanent basis, to the cost of a contractor. And we know that those typically don't look the same. So how should we look at that?
How do they typically look? If you just compare that, what would the outcome be if you just compared that?
So we would typically see that the cost of a contractor just on the monthly basis for the hours worked would be 30%, 40% higher, maybe even as high as 50% depending on the skill compared to a permanent employee. But let me explain why that would be. And you have to ensure that you're comparing apples with apples. So let's not talk quality at this stage. It's just the cost of this particular person. With a contractor, you pay for what you get. So the hours that they are putting in, that they are working for you, that you have approved, that is what you are paying for. So there's your cost. On the permanent side, if we are honest, in terms of permanent employees, there is obviously the salary, but you are giving them leave, which a contractor doesn't have, which you are paying them for. There will be other guaranteed elements depending on the territory that you're in. There may be insurances, there will be sick leave, obviously, other kinds of leave. There's typically then also a bonus at the end of the year based on performance, and that could scale. So the best performing employees will hopefully do really well. When you factor all of these additional costs, and there may be even more, such as office space, desk space that you have to pay for, which you may not have to pay for with the contractor. Sometimes if they're in office, you would. When you add those additional costs and you then effectively divide by the time that they are truly working in a year, then you will find that we're on far more equal footing in terms of the actual cost. So we always encourage our clients to think about both of these, but obviously we'd argue that you're getting quality.
So that's the cost side of the equation. So in terms of the return, how do you think about that, or how could you think about that?
Return is obviously a difficult one to measure, and at any time when we're talking about people. So within HR circles, I'm sure this is a discussion point in itself. So when we think about return, I would say that the most obvious is actually any kind of retrospective work that you can do on projects where independents have been involved and how well those projects' outcomes have panned out in reality. So that's one way to look at the return. But there are many other aspects that you should be thinking about, and they are hard to measure. The quality of the skills that you're getting, the ability to execute. Bearing in mind that independents live and die by the quality of the work that they do. Their reputation really hinges on their ability to come in and do really good work. If they don't, they will not be getting the next opportunity. So there is a quality of work an expertise, and a focus on delivery, which is part of the package, so to speak. Then you may be bringing in independent talent for specific needs or specific reasons. So you need particular expertise that you just simply don't have. So there's value in that. So that's one way to look at it. The other is innovation. Often the skills that you're bringing in are around innovation and what that does for your organization, both in the short term and in the long term. Both of those can be applied to upskilling of your permanent staff members and any team members there. That has value long term. And so I think when we think about all of these things, the return is, while difficult to measure, it's definitely evident.
And there's other things I think also which sometimes are forgotten in terms of, you as an organization have a lower risk, right?
Yes.
So it's difficult to quantify how much is that worth to you as a company, right?
Yes, on the cost side, absolutely. So when we were comparing costs, we're really talking about when somebody is working. So comparing the permanent employee who is working versus the contractor who is working. Yeah. The big advantage is with contractors, you can scale down, which you cannot do with fixed headcounts. And so, yes, in terms of those, the fixed cost reduction, moving to a variable cost model for a proportion of your talent, then that has absolute value.
And coming back to the return side of the equation, is there an argument to say, hey, by bringing in these external experts, you get potentially more out of your existing employees in terms of engagement, motivation? They get to work with, a different kind of people potentially in their teams and projects.
Yes, I think our experience has been that where independents with great expertise are brought into a team, it really energizes the team, and there can be various reasons for this. We spoke previously about burnout, which could be, if there's a headcount freeze, for instance, just bringing somebody in, just the relief that brings, that's a factor. When that's not a case, but they're bringing in expertise which then is being passed on into the organization, and they're working with these team members, that often energizes the teams. And we see there's a lot of value in this ripple effect of sharing that knowledge and expertise within that organization and that team. That yes, it makes a big difference.
For organizations that are struggling with kind of bringing it all together, kind of are there other ways you can kind of think about it, or other pieces of evidence that kind of you can look at to see, hey, does it stack up, right?
Yeah. I think maybe I can cite two examples just from our practical experience. The first is the number of extensions that we get on contracts. And this is not just purely down to the fact that the project isn't finished or they haven't found somebody for that role. It's really our clients coming back and saying, well, this is such a fantastic resource, we need to retain them. And so that's when you've moved from a cost discussion into the space of value. These independents are adding value into the organizations where they have stepped into and they're working. So while, for argument's sake, our average contract length is 6 months on the original contract, when we go back and we analyze it, it's often 8-9 months or longer on average. We've had many contracts that have been extended multiple times, and that's really just to retain the skills. So that's one example. I can then cite an actual example from a client of ours who there'd been a big loss of skills within the department, and so Outsized assisted in bringing in senior people who could steady the ship and provide that training, oversight, subject matter expertise while permanent recruitment was happening in from the bottom. And that department was built up like that. Now, at the point at which you would think these contracts should be coming to a natural end, and in fact, probably would have been the expectation at the beginning because there was a big focus on costs. And this particular manager was saying to me, look, I'm really fighting fires here because I'm getting a lot of questions as to why is this costing what it is costing compared to the recruitment. now, because that department is delivering so well and these projects are having such great outcomes and the revenue from the business that they actually do is coming in, those questions have simply disappeared. And those independents are still retained, are still working there, have been integrated into the team. It's as if they were there all along and they're just considered part of the team, but they happen to be independents.
Let's say you're a company now and you've done the analysis and you're still a little bit on the fence. Should we go for a permanent employee? Should we go for independent talent for this particular role or for these roles that we have or things that need to be done? Are there some ways that they can reduce the cost of the independent talent to make the maths kind of work even better for them, or to reduce the risk of it?
Absolutely. So part of the cost that you're paying for with an independent is the fact that as an employer you're transferring risk to them, right? So they are the ones that can be moved out if you need to flex down. They are the ones who have variable income based on the usage and the output. So the one way to think about is, how do you reduce that risk for them? It's also related to something we've spoken about previously, is scoping out these projects well. So overall, know what you need independent talent for, so that there's no leakage, so to speak, in terms of who you need. But once you know who you need, what we often see is that clients are coming to us and dipping their toes in the water, as it were, and saying, okay, I will offer a 3-month contract, when in fact the project is going to run for 6 months or more. And they probably know that they could take somebody on for 6 months. If you put yourself in the shoes of an independent, there's far less risk in taking, when you know that you can deliver and you back yourself to deliver, there's far less risk in taking a longer term contract. So the simplest thing that any employer thinking about independent talent can do is to say, what is the true length of contract that I need, and go with that. You still have the ability to pull back if you need to flex down, but assuming, and you need to be honest about this, again, this is about being honest with talent out there, otherwise you'll develop the wrong reputation, but be honest with them. If this truly is a 6-month contract, then put it out as a 6-month contract. You will get better rates.
That's interesting and makes sense, I guess. There's risk on both sides, right? And for talent, this is a risk. Great. Anything else that we haven't mentioned that you think employers should consider when comparing these alternatives, or when potentially moving into a more flexible talent model?
I guess while the topic here is ROI, that is one measure, isn't it? And there's multiple ways in which you can think about these. And so really, I don't want to at this stage offer another ratio or another measure, but the value that you derive from flexible resourcing, think about that broadly. As we said, the agility that it brings to your organization, what's that worth to you? The access to skills that it brings to your organization, what is that worth to you? The ability to scale rapidly up and down, what is that worth to you? These are all perhaps hard to quantify, but I think if we think about it, we'll have a sense that there's value, and the proof is in the pudding, as they say. We are seeing a rise in the use of flexible talent, and well, you got to ask the question, why are others doing it?
And I guess we're also seeing in across sectors that often the companies that are outperforming have a kind of a progressive and explicit focus on bringing in the best available talent, whether that's perm or independents, right? So that's also maybe a part of the puzzle. Well, thanks, Johann. Great to have you here.
Great pleasure.
And we'll speak to you soon again.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks.